Hey everybody, welcome back. So we have a new game today against Mr. Marmish, I think. And we have the French defense in front of us. He's rated 2300, so I'm expecting quite a, let's say, good game. Let's play knight c3. So I want to apologize for not having a camera this time. It just had some issues with my computer's camera, so I hope this will not affect this video too much. So he's playing knight f6, attacking my pawn on e4. Let me play e5. I think the French defense is one of those openings which e4 players tend to hate pretty much, because the type of game is usually very different from other e4 openings. It's usually more close type positions. So all of those moves that you see in front of you are very standard moves of the opening theory. I will probably do bishop. Okay, I wanted to say bishop c5, but he went bishop b4 immediately, which is interesting because it's not very clear whether this move bishop takes c3 is really a threat. But one of my ideas is to play the move queen d2, followed by long castling. So I might do the same thing here. But I might also use the fact that my knight is not under any pressure like he usually is, and maybe play a slightly different move. Question is, what exactly a different move can I do? So two moves come to mind, maybe even three. One of them is to just develop the bishop to d3, which is sensible. I'm only a bit worried about the fact that the queen no longer protects the knight on d4, which might allow him to play some move like queen b6. And other options would be to send the queen towards the king side, maybe g4 or f3 for some missions. Even though by far the most logical move would be queen d2 for sure. So I'm kind of having my doubts. Let's play queen d2, see what happens. Maybe it's not the most accurate move, but at least I will kind of learn something new about this variation. So castling, right? So if I want, I can always chase this bishop away with a move like a3, right? So my opponent is writing in Russian in the chat. Okay, I'll answer him shortly. I kind of want to play bishop d3, but I also am kind of wondering why is a3 exactly a big deal. Let's try to play a3. Because if he wants to maintain the pin, he'll have to play bishop a5 probably. So I'll just write him. So a3 is basically is a move that in some positions black is actually happy to provoke, because if white ever goes long castle, which is a very sensible plan in this kind of position, then he might have some targets to attack with a6, b5, and in some positions maybe b4. Yeah, queen a5. That's interesting because so he's trying to pin my pawn and basically make it impossible for me to capture his bishop. But am I really that much worried about him capturing my bishop? Because this will completely kind of surrender the control over the dark squares. So let me try and ignore it and just play a developing move. So my idea is to go short castle. And once I play the move short castling, then my rook will protect the other rook on a1. So I will kind of renew the threat to take on b4. Yeah, so we're going to exchange many pieces now. I will have double pawns, which is of course not the greatest thing in the world, but I think my strong dark square bishop will be a very strong compensation for the fact that I will have some double pawns. Because look at his pawns, almost all of them are being fixed on light squares. This is why my dark square bishop is actually having a lot of potential. For example, we can imagine one day this bishop, after the knight from d4 moves, the bishop coming to c5, and then perhaps d6. One more idea is to play knight b5, and once again play for these weak dark squares in his camp c7 or d6. So actually it might even make sense for black to do something which might look a bit counterintuitive. Yeah, and to take on d4, that's what I wanted to say. So now basically I can fix my pawn structure with pawn takes d4, which I'll probably have to do, but then black maybe has a plan of going knight b6 and trying to play for my weakened actually light squares. All of my pawns are actually fixed on dark squares. So I'm almost certain he'll now play knight b6 and then maybe try to develop his bishop to d7. Yes, this is very sensible. So his plan is perhaps someday develop his bishop, maybe develop one rook to c8 and plant his knight on c4. I'm not too worried about this because once he plays knight c4 I can always drop back my bishop on c1. So it shouldn't be a very big deal. Always a small question in this kind of positions is whether I should castle or not, because we already kind of reached an endgame, not too many pieces are left on the board. So I might just keep my king right there, maybe, and go very aggressively with g4. My idea is to open up the game on the king side. Let's go g4. And once again against knight c4, I'll always have the option of retreating bishop c1, so it shouldn't be a big deal. And the fact that I'm not castling might backfire, but that might also benefit me, because in some positions I would like to push my pawns forward, and the rook on h1 can actually be very supportive of these actions. So he's kind of offering draw on chat, but I cannot really accept a draw when I'm kind of recording an educational video. That would be kind of without any fight. I still believe though that white has a slightly more potential. I really have faith kind of in my bishops. He plays f6, trying to kind of open up the f-file for his rook, which is very sensible, I believe. Once again, this question of whether to castle or not kind of arises in my head. I'll try to play king e2, kind of keeping my kings close to the action. And if he takes on e5, I will have some small kind of debate with myself how to recapture. Okay, bishop d7, very logical. Now, should I play a prophylactic move, a4? The idea is to regain some control over the light squares, because this bishop might be planted on b5 or a4, which are both very juicy squares. So playing this kind of move and kind of denying those squares makes sense. But also this move has this drawback, is the fact that the pawn itself on a4 can become a weakness later on, and it might fix it with a5 and then start attacking it. I'm not so sure. I'll just keep my plan for now of going h4 and trying to expand on the king side. So my next move might be something like h5, maybe h6. I want to basically exchange as much pawns as possible because I do possess the two bishops advantage, and when having the two bishops advantage I would really would like to open up the game as much as I can, and the best way to open up the game is basically by exchanging pawns. Rook f7, okay. So his idea is probably to double his rooks on this file and then open up the position and try to kind of penetrate my position this way. Fair enough. Even though once again I can always recapture with my d pawn, so I'm not too much scared of this play. Let's play h5. I want to kind of scare him a little bit with my idea to play h6 at some point, and he definitely doesn't want to go h6 himself because it will weaken those light squares in his position. It will give us opportunities to go bishop g6. My next move, perhaps, if he, well, for example, if he plays rook f8, it might not be my next move, but as an idea, I would really like to go at some point g5, kind of forcing him either to take on g5 or to allow me to exchange many pawns. Okay, b5, it's a logical move, kind of trying to reinforce the knight, but it's not very consistent with his last move, rook f7, so I'm not sure I would play this move myself. But it's not a bad move, obviously. I do want to keep expanding on the king side, so let's go g5. I also have a kind of hidden threat here, which I'm kind of wondering if you will see. So in this position, on the next move I might play bishop takes h7 check, followed by g6, which wins some material. So for example, if he plays his planned move rook f8, I probably I can just do this. So I don't think it will be a great idea for him. Well, and if he's not playing rook f8, then I might want to go g6 myself. Yeah, so he plays rook f8, and this move I'm kind of happy to see, because this makes his move rook f7 earlier on just a nonsense move. But what did I actually achieve with all of those pawn advance? Now every pawn move that I make, he will probably react with closing up the position. So g6, h6, h6, g6. I cannot make any progress at the moment. The problem is that my rooks are disconnected from the game. It's really a problem for me. I really would, if this was a legal move, I would play it for sure, but just this will be a violation of the rules. So how to improve my position? If I just try to develop, people at least will have the option of taking my bishop, and then I will have no perspective to play for more than a draw. Okay, maybe rook h4 makes sense. So the idea is to be able to develop the bishop. This looks very clumsy, but I'm kind of desperate for ideas here. So I might actually play it. Let's play a rook h4, see what happens. He will probably try to play a5 and expand on the queen side. This position might be just kind of dead end, maybe just a draw somehow. Let's play rook b1 just to just to kind of make this b4 more difficult to achieve. Now I think white would have a nice position if you could just exchange all of the rooks, but the problem is that he's controlling the only open file, and it's very difficult for me to actually just exchange all of the rooks, because this rook is kind of disconnected from the actual action. Maybe I need to bring it into the game with the help of a move like rook b3, then moving the bishop and then trying to play rook f3. That might be an idea to consider. Yeah, it's a very it's a really tough position to crack, kind of. Rook b8 is sensible. He wants to be able to play b4 and create some active counterplay. I might play c3 just to stop it. The problem is that now I don't have those options of going rook b3 like I mentioned before, but I kind of have a new idea which kind of I just figured I should have seen it earlier. I could have played my rook to the game somehow like this. Maybe that's my way to improve the position, because this rook bishop f4 plan was a bit clumsy, I think. So if he does nothing special, I might do it actually. Even though it takes a lot of moves. So rook a1 is one move, that's 2, that's 3, that's 4. 4 moves in order to activate my rook. The position though is not so much, let's say, not very dynamic, so there is perhaps not it's not a really big deal to lose one tempo like this. So I'm playing rook a1. That's a small provocation, because I am allowing the move b4 at this point, but if he plays b4, many pawns get exchanged, the position will open up a little bit, and I might be able to cause some trouble for him with my rook maybe coming to the 7th rank. Might not be a lot, but okay, this move that he made is really strange to me. What's the point of this? Isn't it just surrendering the control over the file? I have an interesting option now to play h6, g6, and then rook f4 and plant my rook on f6. This is, to me, it feels like a small achievement, maybe not huge, but the only problem with this is that it completely closes up the game and leaves me no opportunities of a break. Let's continue with my plan of rook a2. Yeah, rook f8. So it's not entirely clear what was the move rook f8 about. Maybe just a mouse slip. So now I'm having this problem once again. If I play king e1, he'll have some penetrating square. So let's play rook h3. So because I abandoned kind of this plan of rook bishop f4, so there is no sense in playing this move. Okay, king e1. So all of the entry squares for this rook are covered, right? No danger. Okay, last chance to do something. Let's do rook f2. If this doesn't, maybe it's still a draw, of course. There is a very good chance that this is still nothing for white, but at least I managed to kind of exchange this very passive rook. Okay, now should I exchange? Position is such a dead end. It's really even now it's difficult to make kind of any progress. But I will try to play a bit on, kind of see if I can make my opponent a bit confused or something. Not even sure actually what am I trying to do right here. Maybe I can reroute my bishop. Actually, now that I think about it, I've never considered rerouting my bishop. My bishop is not doing anything special here. Maybe I should bring it on g4, where it at least makes pressure on e6. Once again, it's probably nothing special, but we are... there is really... I have no problem trying anything at this point. I'll probably have to accept draw at some point. There is no no plan in sight. My opponent really did a good job of just closing the position just all together completely. I'll try to shuffle around my pieces a bit, but it will most likely end in a draw, of course. Don't see even a single plan for white to improve his position. Even a single one. Probably just a draw. Sad to admit. Sad to admit. But I really am struggling to find anything to do at this position. Just anything. Yeah, let's just offer a draw. Probably a fair result for this game. So basically, yeah, the computer still says slight advantage for white at the end, but it's really an artificial kind of assessment of the engine. There is no way to progress. I think the engine is having difficult times to grasp it actually. So yeah, the computer doesn't like make move queen d2 at all, but maybe this whole position that I went into, this one, yeah, the engine also says slight advantage for white, but it's so difficult to make progress here. So I went for this plan of just playing this position, but my opponent played actually very well and held his position very comfortably. Didn't even had to do anything special. He just shuffled around his pieces a bit. Maybe the only point in the game where I could slightly change the course of the game was in this point. Yeah, probably this move was just a mouse slip. I don't have any other way to explain it. So maybe that was a little bit of critical point. Now I can do rook f4, as I mentioned, then rook f6. And I'm actually really not sure how to evaluate this position. I think that what happens if he just takes on f6 at some point? So engine says pawn takes f6, but how do I make progress in this position if black just puts a blockade on f7? Once again, I really feel like the engine is over-evaluating this position, overestimating the position, and I think it also should be a dead draw. Maybe e pawn takes f6 is keeping some options to play, because now I have the e file, so I have some plan to play maybe bishop f4 and at some point rook e1. Maybe this kind of leaves some room for some play, even though it might also be a draw, of course. Anyways, not too much of an exciting game. Hope you liked it still. See you in the next times. Bye bye, guys.